I speak to you in the name of the one holy and living God. Suffering. Who here likes to think about suffering? Witness suffering? Experience suffering? No one. Yet, here we all are, sitting at the foot of a cross. A cross that represents suffering. Center of our faith, humanity nailed to a cross. Here's the thing. We cannot escape, avoid, or inoculate ourselves against suffering. However, we can get beyond suffering by consenting to go through it. Think of it this way. Let's say we want to be on top of Mount Lemon. We have to walk, or bike, or drive, or fly to get there. We cannot get from here to there without undertaking the journey. And that means we must engage with every twist, every turn, and every obstacle along the way. Such is the story of life. Life involves suffering. Everything from a vague sense of unsettledness. Gee, I wonder what's around that corner. I'd like to see what's on the other side of that hill. I'd like to get to someplace different. To, I am experiencing severe physical or mental pain or anguish. I cannot bear it, not another moment. I cannot even imagine taking yet another step. Suffering. And for as long as we desire things to be different than they are, whether it be a subtle unsettledness or grave distress, we suffer. Because suffering is always associated with our desire for things to be other than they are. That is what suffering is, people. Now, of course, there is an antidote to this. There is an end to suffering, and the end to suffering is consent. Free and full consent to the way things are. I believe that most of us kind of like to think of ourselves as strong, secure, and long-lasting. Would you agree? Yeah. Well, the truth is, we are fragile, vulnerable, and perishable. The truth to which we must consent is we actually have a shelf life, people. We don't know it most of the time, but there is an end date. Today we ritually articulate this with ashes. Ashes, the dusty remains of last year's palms, the palms that we joyfully waved to celebrate Jesus' arrival in Jerusalem. This was Palm Sunday or Passion Sunday. We call it the triumphal entry. But isn't that interesting? What is triumphal? We know where it's leading. In an extremely condensed and highly dramatized narrative, Jesus shows us what free and full consent looks like. He consents to his call, to his ministry of reform, reforming the status quo by touching the untouchables, valuing the unvaluable, forgiving even the unforgivable, making room for all people. Now, he was not the first person to go down this road, challenging the status quo of the political and the religious officials. So he knew where they ended up, nailed on a tree. Jesus knew where the road to Jerusalem was leading him. And still he consents freely and fully to his journey. And we meet him in Gethsemane, that kind of dark and dreary, forlorn, forsaken moment where you know he must be having the taste of ashes in his mouth. And what do we hear him pray? I know you know the answer to this question. Say it with me, people. Not my will, your will be done. In that most dark moment, Jesus freely and fully consents to the way things are. Now, that does not mean he likes it. Just a moment before, he cried out, if you could take this cup, that would be okay. He was deeply distressed. And still, he consents fully and freely to the way things are. So, dear people of God, we come to Ash Wednesday in a war-torn and COVID-stricken world with the fragility of our lives and the insistence on our mortality shouting at us from every corner. Once again this year, rather than engaging in the ritual of imposing ashes on foreheads, one hand between all the heads, we continue adopting the ancient tradition of sprinkling little bits of ash upon your head. And this is my prayer. May the ashes of triumph be a reminder of your fragile state and perishable condition. And may they also be an invitation to give your free and full consent to reality exactly as it is, praying, not my will, your will be done. Pray it with me, people. Not my will, your will be done. Amen.